My daughter sent me an email saying, "Don't come to my wedding, just watch the live stream." I calmly clicked reply and typed 4 words that would destroy her perfect day forever. What she didn't know was that I controlled every single dollar funding her dream wedding. By the end, she'd be begging me to attend while her fiancé's family watched their social status crumble in real time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you exactly how the most ungrateful child learned that some mothers bite back. My name is Victoria Sterling. I'm 62 years old, a widow, and I live in a quiet residential neighborhood in Ashford, Connecticut. For the past 22 years, I've worked as senior office manager at Morrison & Associates, one of the most prestigious law firms in the state. It's not glamorous work, but it's stable, respected, and it pays well enough that I've been able to build a comfortable life from the ashes of tragedy. I've raised 2 children completely on my own after my husband David died in a car accident when they were just teenagers. Cassandra, my daughter, just turned 30 last month. Oliver, my son, is 27. And I've spent every waking moment of the last 2 decades making sure they never had to struggle the way I did after losing their father. I thought I was being a good mother. I thought sacrifice was love. I thought if I just gave enough, loved enough, supported enough, my children would grow up to be grateful, kind adults who valued family above everything else. I was spectacularly wrong. Last Tuesday started like any other autumn day in Connecticut. The leaves were turning brilliant shades of orange and gold, and there was that crisp quality to the air that always reminded me why I loved living in New England. I was in my office at Morrison & Associates, reviewing contracts for a major corporate merger when my phone chimed with a new email notification. The sender's name made me smile before I even opened it, Cassandra Sterling. No subject line, just her name sitting in my inbox like a warm hug waiting to be opened. I thought maybe it was a sweet note about her wedding plans, or perhaps she wanted to finalize some last-minute details we'd been discussing. We had just spoken 3 weeks earlier about her dream wedding in Napa Valley, California. It was going to be everything she'd ever wanted since she was a little girl playing bride in my old curtains. A vineyard ceremony at sunset, professional photographers capturing every moment, a reception under the stars with a 10-piece orchestra and flowers that cost more than most people's cars. I had already wired $45,000 to secure the venue, photographer, and the exclusive florist she'd been obsessing over since her college days. The wedding was still 2 months away, but Cassandra had always been a meticulous planner, just like her mother. I was proud of her attention to detail, her vision, her determination to make her special day absolutely perfect. What I wasn't prepared for was discovering that her version of perfect didn't include me. I clicked open the email with genuine excitement, maybe even a little maternal pride. My successful, beautiful daughter was getting married to a wonderful man from a prestigious family, and I was going to be right there beside her for every magical moment. Mom, it started. Not dear mom, or hi mom, or even hey mom. Just mom, like a label on a file cabinet or a name on a business card. Benjamin and I, along with his family, have finalized the guest list for the ceremony. After much consideration and several family meetings, we've decided it would be best for you to watch the wedding by a live stream rather than attending in person. Benjamin's mother, Patricia, is very particular about keeping the guest count intimate and sophisticated, and we want to respect her wishes since the Hayes family is contributing significantly to the overall costs. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. I read that paragraph 3 times, certain I was misunderstanding something. We know this might seem unusual, but we've put a lot of thought into this decision. The venue has very strict capacity limits, and Patricia has some specific ideas about the guest demographic that will photograph well and create the right atmosphere. We've created a private Google Meet link so you can still be part of the special day from the comfort of your own home. It'll be just like being there, maybe even better since you'll have the best view of everything without having to worry about travel or formal attire. The words started blurring together as the reality sank in. My own daughter was disinviting me from her wedding. Not because of a family emergency, not because of venue issues, but because her future mother-in-law thought I wasn't the right demographic for their sophisticated celebration. We'll make sure the camera captures all the important moments, and we'll do a special wave just for you during the ceremony. We hope you understand that this is really about making sure everyone is comfortable and that the day goes smoothly. You've always been so understanding and supportive, and we knew you'd be the one person who would get it. The manipulation in that line made my stomach turn. She was using my own kindness, my own history of putting her needs first, as a weapon against me. Don't forget to RSVP through the link so we know you're watching, and please don't mention this arrangement to Oliver or any of the extended family. We'd prefer to handle those conversations ourselves. Love you. P.S. The streaming starts at 4 p.m. Pacific Time. LOL. That LOL at the end felt like a slap across the face. As if my exclusion from the most important day of her life was somehow amusing. As if watching my own daughter get married through a computer screen like some distant acquaintance was a joke we could all laugh about later. I stared at that screen for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. My coffee grew cold in my hands. I could hear the normal sounds of the office around me, phones ringing, conversations about cases, the hum of the air conditioning, but it all felt very far away, like I was underwater. Something inside me shifted. Not broke, exactly, but changed. Like a gear that had been grinding for years suddenly clicked into a new position, and the whole machine started running differently. Here was my daughter, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, telling me to watch her wedding through a computer screen like some peripheral relative she barely knew. After I'd already paid nearly half the wedding costs. After I'd spent 15 years working double shifts to pay for her college, her apartment deposits, her car payments, her credit card debt when she'd overspent on clothes and vacations. After I'd held her hand through every heartbreak, celebrated every achievement, supported every dream even when I thought she was making mistakes. And her reasoning? I wasn't the right demographic for her sophisticated wedding. I wasn't good enough for the Hayes family social circle. I was an embarrassment to be hidden away, acknowledged only through a Google Meet link and a special wave. I clicked reply and sat staring at the blank message box for a long moment. Part of me wanted to type everything I was feeling. I wanted to remind her of every sacrifice I'd made, every night I'd worked late to pay for her expenses, every dream of my own I'd deferred so she could have hers. Instead, I typed exactly 4 words, sure. Enjoy your day. No emotion. No argument. No explanation. Just a quiet, deadly calm acknowledgement that I'd received her message and accepted her decision. I hit send and closed my laptop. Then I finished my cold coffee, gathered my purse, and walked out of my office. My assistant, Jennifer, looked up from her desk with concern. "Mrs. Sterling? Are you feeling all right? You look pale." I paused at her desk and managed what I hoped was a reassuring smile. "I've never felt clearer about anything in my life, Jennifer. Hold my calls for the rest of the day, would you?" That was the moment I stopped being the mother who gave everything and started being the woman who took back her power. But first, let me tell you how we got here, because this betrayal didn't happen overnight. It was the culmination of 15 years of taking me for granted, and I have the receipts, literally and figuratively, to prove it. When my husband David died, I was 47 years old with 2 traumatized teenagers and a mortgage I couldn't afford on my secretary's salary. David had been the primary breadwinner, a successful insurance agent with a good life insurance policy that covered the funeral and some immediate expenses, but nowhere near enough to maintain our standard of living. I remember standing in our kitchen at 2 a.m. exactly 1 week after the funeral, bills spread across the counter like a paper avalanche, trying to figure out how to pay for both groceries and Cassandra's college application fees. She was a senior in high school then, 17 years old and desperate to attend an expensive private liberal arts college in Vermont that cost more per year than I made in salary. Oliver was 15, quieter than his sister, but dealing with his grief by throwing himself into expensive hobbies, photography equipment, computer programming courses, a car he wanted to restore with his dad before David died. Every need felt urgent. Every want felt like a memorial to their father's memory. I didn't think twice about what I had to do. I took a second job cleaning offices on weekends, working from 6 p.m. Friday until 6 a.m. Saturday, then again Sunday mornings. I sold my engagement ring and my grandmother's china set, pieces that had been in our family for 3 generations. I canceled my health insurance and prayed I wouldn't get sick. I stopped buying new clothes, started shopping at discount grocery stores, gave up my gym membership and my monthly hair appointments. Every single sacrifice was for them. Every corner I cut was so they wouldn't have to feel the impact of losing their father in any way beyond the emotional devastation. When Cassandra got accepted to that expensive college, I was so proud I cried in the financial aid office. When she called home freshman year complaining about her roommate, I drove 4 hours each way to help her move to a single room that cost an extra $3,000 per semester. When she changed her major from business to art history sophomore year, requiring an extra year of college, I took out loans against my 401k without hesitation. When she changed her major again junior year to communications, then again senior year to marketing, I just smiled and paid for the additional credits and summer courses she needed to graduate on time. When she decided she wanted to spend a semester studying abroad in France, I worked overtime for 6 months to cover the program fees and travel expenses. When she came back and announced she was moving to Los Angeles to pursue her dream of becoming an Instagram influencer and lifestyle blogger, I helped her find an apartment, paid her security deposit, and gave her my credit card for emergencies. That Instagram dream lasted exactly 4 months. The lifestyle blog never materialized beyond a few posts about smoothie recipes and her morning routine. But when she called me crying at 2 a.m., saying she was lonely and broke and wanted to come home, I didn't hesitate. I bought her a plane ticket, hired movers for her furniture, and welcomed her back with open arms and no judgment. When she had what she called a quarter-life crisis at 26 and needed therapy to work through her anxiety and depression, I researched therapists, made appointments, and covered her sessions for 8 months because she didn't have health insurance through her part-time retail job. When she met Benjamin and decided she wanted to move in with him but couldn't afford to break her lease, I paid the early termination fee. When they decided to get engaged and Benjamin complained about his credit score making it hard to finance a ring, I helped him with the down payment so he could get the 2-carat diamond Cassandra had been hinting about for months. Meanwhile, Oliver had his own expensive needs. When he wanted to buy a house with his girlfriend Sarah, I co-signed the mortgage without hesitation and wrote them a $15,000 check for the down payment. When he got laid off from his tech job last year, I paid his mortgage for 3 months until he found another position. When his car broke down and he needed reliable transportation for job interviews, I leased him a new Honda and put it in my name. Through all of this, I never kept score. I never made them feel guilty for needing help. I never reminded them of my sacrifices or made them feel like they owed me anything. I told myself that's what mothers do. We give until there's nothing left, and then we find a way to give some more. But that email made me realize something horrifying. I wasn't their mother anymore. I was their ATM. I was useful when they needed money, invisible when they didn't, and now I was officially disposable. The drive from my office back to my house that afternoon was the quietest 20 minutes of my life. Connecticut's autumn landscape was absolutely gorgeous. The maple trees lining the streets were brilliant orange and red, and the afternoon light had that golden quality that photographers spend fortunes trying to capture. But I barely noticed any of it. My mind kept replaying every moment over the past few years when I'd been dismissed, every time my feelings had been secondary to someone else's comfort, every holiday dinner where I'd cooked for hours just to eat alone because they had other plans or prior commitments that were somehow more important than family time. Last Christmas, for example, I'd spent 3 days preparing Cassandra's favorite dishes, homemade ravioli, my mother's recipe for apple pie, the special stuffing she'd loved since childhood. I'd decorated the house, bought thoughtful gifts, planned games and activities like I had when they were children. Cassandra showed up 2 hours late because she and Benjamin had decided to stop by his parents' house first for mimosas and appetizers. Oliver came alone because Sarah had decided last minute that she wanted to spend Christmas with her own family instead. They both ate quickly, checked their phones constantly, and left before dessert because they had other parties to attend. I'd sat alone in my beautifully decorated house, looking at the untouched pie and the carefully wrapped gifts they'd been too distracted to properly appreciate, and wondered when I'd become such a low priority in my children's lives. Or my birthday last May. I'd mentioned weeks in advance that I was hoping we could all have dinner together, maybe at that Italian restaurant we used to go to when they were teenagers. Cassandra texted me the morning of my birthday to say she and Benjamin had concert tickets they'd forgotten about. Oliver called around noon to wish me happy birthday but said he couldn't make dinner because Sarah had planned a surprise date night. I ended up eating alone at the Italian restaurant, surrounded by families and couples celebrating together, while the waiter looked at me with pity every time he asked if I was still waiting for my party to arrive. But I'd made excuses for them. They were busy young adults with their own lives. They had careers and relationships and social obligations. I was proud that they were independent and successful. I told myself that being needed less meant I'd done my job as a mother well. That email shattered that comfortable delusion. It wasn't that they didn't need me anymore. They still needed my money, my support, my endless capacity for understanding and forgiveness. They just didn't want me. Back at Morrison and Associates, I sat at my desk staring at legal documents, but seeing nothing. The words swam on the page as my mind processed what had just happened. Around 10 a.m., my boss Thomas Morrison appeared at my desk with a steaming cup of coffee from Grind Coffee House, the expensive cafe downstairs that made the best lattes in town. "You look like you've been hit by a truck," he said gently, setting the coffee on my desk next to my keyboard. Thomas is one of those increasingly rare men who actually pays attention to the people around him. He remembers birthdays, asks about your weekend plans, notices when you get a haircut, and genuinely cares about his employees as human beings, not just legal machines. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to say my daughter just disinvited me from her wedding while still expecting me to pay for it. I wanted to explain how I'd spent decades sacrificing everything for children who saw me as nothing more than a convenient source of funding. Instead, I managed a weak smile and said I hadn't slept well the night before. He didn't push, which almost made me cry right there at my desk. That small act of kindness, that perfectly prepared coffee, that respect for my boundaries, reminded me that I was still a person worth caring about, even if my own children had forgotten. "Take the day if you need to," Thomas said quietly. "The Morrison case can wait until tomorrow." I shook my head. "Work is good for me right now. But thank you for the coffee. And for caring." He squeezed my shoulder gently before walking back to his office, and I had to bite my lip to keep from crying. It struck me that my boss, who'd known me for less than a decade, showed me more consideration and respect in that moment than my own daughter had in her entire email. Around noon, my phone started buzzing like an angry wasp. Text after text from Cassandra. "Mom, did you get my email? Please respond. We need to discuss the logistics. This isn't funny. Call me back. Why are you being so dramatic? It's just a wedding. Benjamin's mother is asking about your response. Please just confirm you got the message. I don't understand why you're being difficult about this. Just a wedding." My daughter's wedding was just a wedding to her. The most important day of her life was something I was being dramatic about wanting to attend. I turned my phone face down and didn't respond. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't going to be the one who rushed to smooth things over. I wasn't going to be the one who apologized for having feelings or made myself smaller to make someone else more comfortable. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. I didn't go straight home after work. Instead, I drove to First National Bank, where I'd been a faithful customer for over 20 years. The building was one of those classic New England brick structures with white columns and brass fixtures that made you feel like your money was safe and your business was valued. Michael Rodriguez, the branch manager, greeted me with his usual warm smile as soon as I walked through the door. Michael had handled all my major financial transactions over the years: the refinancing of my mortgage after David died, the college fund withdrawals for Cassandra's education, the loan I'd taken for Oliver's house down payment. "Mrs. Sterling, what a pleasant surprise. What can I do for you today?" I sat down across from his mahogany desk and placed my purse carefully on the floor. My voice was calm, almost eerily so, with the kind of controlled tone I used when I was absolutely certain about a decision. "I need to cancel a scheduled wire transfer, Michael." He blinked, his fingers automatically moving toward his keyboard. "Of course. Can you give me the details?" "The one to Bella Vista Vineyard in Napa Valley. It's scheduled for tomorrow morning." His eyebrows rose slightly as he pulled up my account. That's $55,000, Mrs. Sterling. For the wedding venue, correct? May I ask why you're canceling?" I looked at him steadily. The circumstances have changed. Michael had been in banking long enough to recognize when a customer didn't want to elaborate, but I could see the concern in his eyes. There may be cancellation fees associated with stopping a wire transfer, depending on the timing, but… He paused, checking his screen more carefully. "Actually, you're in luck. The transfer hasn't been processed yet. You're literally just under the wire. No pun intended." He looked up at me with genuine concern, the kind of expression that comes from years of helping customers through financial crises and family emergencies. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Mrs. Sterling? This is a very significant amount of money, and wedding vendors can be unforgiving about last-minute changes." I thought about my daughter's email, about being told to watch her wedding through a screen while Benjamin's mother played hostess with my money, about being dismissed as the wrong demographic for their sophisticated celebration, about that casual LOL at the end, as if my heartbreak was amusing. "I'm completely sure, Michael." He printed out the cancellation forms, and I could see him trying to piece together what might have happened. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Sterling? You seem different today. More resolved, if that makes sense." I looked up at him as I signed the papers with steady hands. "Everything is perfect, Michael. I'm finally thinking clearly for the first time in years." $55,000. That was what I was about to send tomorrow morning, on top of the $45,000 I'd already wired to secure the venue, photographer, and florist. $100,000 total for a wedding I wasn't allowed to attend. A wedding where I'd been demoted to live stream viewer, while Benjamin's mother played Lady of the Manor with my money. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, the intoxicating rush of taking back control. For 2 decades, I'd been reactive, accommodating, endlessly flexible. I'd bent myself into whatever shape my children needed, given whatever they asked for, accepted whatever scraps of attention and affection they offered in return. But this was different. This was me making a choice based on my own worth, my own dignity, my own understanding of what I deserved. It felt terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. By the time I pulled into my driveway, my phone had exploded with notifications. 17 missed calls from Cassandra. 8 from Oliver. Multiple voicemails that I didn't bother listening to. Text messages that grew increasingly frantic as the afternoon wore on. I carried my phone inside, poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive Pinot Noir I'd been saving for Cassandra's wedding toast, and took it out to my back porch. The sun was setting behind the oak trees in my yard, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. Birds chirped in the branches overhead, and somewhere in the distance I could hear children playing in a neighbor's yard. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely peaceful. That's when the memories started flooding back. Not the good ones that I usually let myself dwell on, but the real ones. The honest ones that I'd been making excuses for and explaining away for years. I thought about all the birthdays I'd planned alone because they were too busy with work or friends or their significant others to celebrate with me. The elaborate surprise party I'd thrown for Cassandra's 25th birthday, spending weeks planning every detail, only to have her show up late and leave early because she had other plans she'd forgotten about. I thought about all the Christmas mornings when I'd cooked elaborate meals for children who showed up late, ate quickly, and left early to visit friends or attend parties that were somehow more exciting than family time. The years when I'd bought thoughtful, expensive gifts while receiving hastily purchased gift cards or generic presents that made it clear no thought had gone into choosing them. I thought about all the times I'd called them excited about something in my life. A promotion at work, a new hobby I was enjoying, a vacation I was planning, only to have them cut me off because they had real problems to deal with or more important things to discuss. Like the time I'd called Cassandra to tell her about the pottery class I'd started taking, something I'd been wanting to try for years. She'd interrupted me after 30 seconds to complain about her relationship drama with some guy she'd been dating for 3 weeks. Or when I'd called Oliver to share that I'd finally paid off my mortgage early, a major financial milestone I'd been working toward for years, and he'd brushed past my news to ask if I could help him with his credit card debt. I thought about Benjamin's mother, Patricia Hayes. I'd only met her twice, once at the engagement party and once at a family dinner, but both times she'd treated me with the kind of polite condescension that wealthy people reserve for service workers. She'd asked about my little job at the law firm, complimented my quaint house when she saw photos, and made subtle comments about how different our families were. The engagement party had been particularly humiliating. Held at the Hayes family's estate in Greenwich, it was a lavish affair with a catered dinner, open bar, and what Patricia kept referring to as our closest friends, meaning their social circle of investment bankers, real estate developers, and country club members. I'd worn my best dress, the navy blue one I'd bought for special occasions, and spent extra money getting my hair done professionally. But from the moment I walked into their marble foyer, I felt out of place. The other guests were draped in designer clothes and expensive jewelry, talking about their second homes and European vacations and their children's prestigious jobs. Patricia had introduced me to people as Cassandra's mother, the one who works in that little law firm, emphasizing my job title in a way that made it clear she considered me several social rungs below their family. When I'd tried to contribute to conversations about travel, she'd interrupted to ask if I'd ever been anywhere exotic, with the kind of tone that suggested she already knew the answer. But the worst part had been watching Cassandra. Instead of defending me or including me in conversations, she'd seemed embarrassed by my presence. She'd steered me away from the more prominent guests and kept apologizing to Benjamin's family for things that didn't need apologies: my modest gift, my unfamiliarity with their inside jokes, my lack of knowledge about their social circle. I should have recognized then that I was being evaluated and found wanting. I should have seen that Cassandra was already choosing between her family of origin and her new family, and I was losing. That dinner at their house had been even worse. Patricia had asked me to bring a side dish, then served it last and barely touched it herself. She'd spent the entire evening talking about the wedding plans while directing all her questions and comments to Benjamin, as if I wasn't even there. When I'd tried to offer input about flowers or music, she'd smiled condescendingly and said things like, "That's sweet, but we've already decided," or "I think we'll stick with something more traditional." The message was clear. This was their wedding, their family's event, and I was just a guest whose presence was being tolerated out of politeness. And now that politeness had apparently worn thin. Patricia Hayes had decided I wasn't worth tolerating anymore, and my own daughter had agreed. I thought about that LOL at the end of Cassandra's email. As if watching your own daughter's wedding through a computer screen was some kind of joke. As if my exclusion from the most important day of her life was amusing rather than heartbreaking. And finally, I thought about myself. Not as a mother, not as a widow, but as a woman. What did I want from my life? What did I deserve? What would I tell a friend if she came to me with this same story? I wanted respect. I wanted to be valued for more than my checkbook. I wanted relationships that weren't one-sided, where my feelings mattered as much as everyone else's convenience. I wanted to stop being the woman who gave everything and got nothing meaningful in return. I was done being convenient. I was done being taken for granted. I was done being the woman who sacrificed her own dignity to keep everyone else comfortable. Around 8 p.m., my doorbell rang. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity won. Through the peephole, I could see Oliver standing on my front porch, still in his work clothes, but with his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled up. He looked agitated, shifting from foot to foot like he'd rather be anywhere else, but having this conversation. "Mom," he said the moment I opened the door, pushing past me into the house without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk." "Hello to you too," I replied calmly, closing the door behind him. "Would you like some coffee? Water?" He was already pacing my living room like a caged animal, his phone clutched in one hand like a weapon. "Cassandra is freaking out. She says you're not coming to the wedding now and that you're being difficult about the whole thing." I laughed. Actually laughed out loud, a sound that surprised both of us. Difficult? I'm being difficult for not attending a wedding I was uninvited from. He stopped pacing and turned to face me, running his hands through his hair in frustration. Look, I know she handled the communication badly, but you have to understand the situation. Benjamin's parents are paying for most of the wedding. You know how traditional wealthy families are about these things. They have certain expectations about guest lists and social dynamics. Traditional. I raised an eyebrow, settling into my favorite armchair with a calmness that seemed to unnerve him. I already paid $45,000 toward this wedding, Oliver. I was scheduled to send another $55,000 tomorrow. That's not tradition. That's exploitation. The color drained from his face as the numbers sank in. Wait, you were sending another $55,000? On top of what you already paid? I emphasized, taking a sip of my wine. Past tense. Not anymore. Mom, they're counting on that money. The venue, the catering, the flowers, the band, everything has been arranged based on those payments. You can't just pull funding at the last minute. Actually, I can. And I did. His voice rose with panic. But they'll lose everything. The deposits, the vendors, the entire wedding. I looked at him steadily. That's not my problem anymore. Of course it's your problem. She's your daughter. And I'm her mother, I said quietly. A mother who was told to stay home and watch from a screen while strangers get my seat at my own daughter's wedding. Oliver ran his hands through his hair again, visibly agitated. You always make everything about yourself, Mom. This is supposed to be Cassandra's day, not yours. And that was it. That was the moment the last thread of my patience snapped completely. Get out of my house. What? You heard me perfectly well. Get out. Mom, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You meant every word. And you know what? You're absolutely right. This is about me. For once in 15 years, I'm making something about me. I'm making my dignity about me. I'm making my self-respect about me. And I'm making my money about me. Oliver stood there for a long moment, probably calculating how this decision would affect his own financial arrangements with me. His mortgage payments, his car lease, the various emergencies I'd helped him with over the years. I could practically see him running the numbers in his head. Mom, please, he said, his tone shifting to something more conciliatory. I know you're hurt, but destroying Cassandra's wedding isn't going to fix anything. Can't you just overlook this one thing? For family. Family? I stood up slowly. Where was family when your sister decided I wasn't good enough to attend her wedding? Where was family when she chose Benjamin's mother's comfort over mine? Where was family when she sent me that email with LOL at the end, like my feelings were a joke? He had no answer for that. I've overlooked things for 15 years, Oliver. I've been understanding and flexible and endlessly forgiving. I've put both of your needs ahead of my own so consistently that you've forgotten I have needs at all. Well, here's something I need: respect. And since I can't get it from my children, I'm going to give it to myself. Oliver turned and walked toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. What am I supposed to tell Cassandra? Tell her exactly what I told her. I hope she enjoys her day. The door closed with a soft click that somehow felt louder than any slam could have. I stood in my living room, heart pounding, and realized something incredible. I didn't feel guilty. I felt powerful. I felt like myself for the first time in years. I poured another glass of wine and called my sister Helen in Arizona. We'd grown apart over the years as our lives took different directions, but she'd always been a straight shooter who didn't hesitate to tell me uncomfortable truths. Victoria, what a nice surprise. How are you, honey? I just disinvited myself from Cassandra's wedding. There was a pause. Wait, what? Back up. Start from the beginning. I told her everything. The email, the live stream suggestion, the money I'd already spent and was supposed to send tomorrow. When I finished, Helen was quiet for a long moment. You know what, Vic? Good for you. Really? Really? I've been watching you sacrifice yourself for those kids for years, and frankly, I've been wondering when you were going to wake up. They've been taking advantage of your good nature since they were teenagers. But she's my daughter. And you're her mother. That should mean something to her. The fact that it doesn't isn't your failure, it's hers. We talked for another hour, and by the time I hung up, I felt validated in a way I hadn't expected. Someone who knew my history, who understood the sacrifices I'd made, agreed that I was making the right choice. The next morning, I woke up to my phone completely dead from the sheer volume of calls and messages. I plugged it in and watched as notification after notification flooded my screen, but I didn't read them. Not yet. First, I needed coffee and the strength that comes from starting your day on your own terms. At exactly 9 a.m., as I was reviewing case files at my office, my personal email chimed. The subject line read, "Urgent. Please call immediately." I opened it without emotion, curious to see how Cassandra would handle this crisis. "Mom, I just got off the phone with the venue coordinator. The payment didn't go through. They're saying if we don't pay the full balance by 5 p.m. today, we lose everything. The deposit, the date, everything." Benjamin's parents are absolutely furious. They said this proves they were right about you being unreliable and difficult to work with. Unreliable. That stung, coming from people who'd never had to work for anything in their lives. "Please call me immediately. We can work this out. I know you're upset about the invitation situation, but please don't punish me by ruining my wedding." This affects Benjamin too, and his entire family. They're humiliated. 20 minutes later, another email. "Mom, I'm panicking. The caterer is threatening to cancel too since they haven't received their deposit. Benjamin's mother is saying horrible things about our family and how we clearly can't be trusted with commitments. Please don't ruin my wedding over a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. That's what she was calling it now. I was deep in legal documents when Thomas appeared at my desk again, this time with a concerned expression and 2 cups of coffee. "Victoria, I don't want to overstep, but you seem, I don't know, different today? Yesterday you looked devastated, and now you look almost satisfied." I set down my pen and looked at him. Thomas had been nothing but kind to me for years, and he deserved honesty. My daughter disinvited me from her wedding via email, but still expects me to pay for it. So I stopped paying. His eyebrows shot up. "She disinvited you?" "Her own mother. Via email. Told me to watch on live stream instead because her future mother-in-law wanted to keep things intimate and I wasn't the right demographic for their sophisticated celebration." Thomas leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from concern to something that looked like anger on my behalf. "How much were you paying for this wedding?" $100,000 total. He whistled low. "And you pulled all the funding?" "Every penny." A slow smile spread across his face. "Good for you, Victoria. Good for you. You know, I've watched you work miracles for other people for years. It's about time you worked one for yourself." That validation from someone who barely knew my personal situation but could immediately see how wrong it was? That meant everything. "I keep waiting to feel guilty," I admitted. "But I just don't." "Why should you feel guilty? You're not responsible for other people's poor planning or sense of entitlement. If they want $100,000 wedding, they should find $100,000. Around 2 p.m., my phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID. Isabella Chin, Cassandra's best friend since childhood. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Isabella had always been a sweet girl, and I was curious about what Cassandra had told her. "Mrs. Sterling? It's Isabella." "Hello, Isabella. How are you, sweetheart?" I'm calling about Cassandra. She asked me to reach out because she's too upset to think clearly." "I see. Mrs. Sterling, I know this isn't my place, but she's a complete mess. She's been crying for hours. The venue canceled this morning. The caterer canceled an hour ago. Even the photographer pulled out because they haven't received their final payment." I said nothing, just listened. Benjamin's parents are furious. They're talking about calling off the entire wedding and saying it's better to find out now what kind of family they're marrying into. Cassandra is devastated. I'm sorry to hear that she's upset. "Mrs. Sterling," Isabella's voice was pleading now. She knows she messed up with that email. She's just too proud to admit it directly. Is there anything she could say or do to fix this? Any way to save the wedding? The question hung in the air between us. Was there? Would an apology change the fact that she'd excluded me from the most important day of her life? Would sorry erase the casual cruelty of that email, the dismissive tone, The assumption that I'd just accept being treated like a second-class relative? No, Isabella. There isn't. Not even if she begs? Not even if she apologizes and promises to include you in everything. Words are easy when people are desperate, sweetheart. But the people who truly love you don't wait until you cut them off to see you. They don't invite you to your own daughter's wedding as a condition of getting your money back. Isabella was quiet for a long moment. I understand. I'm sorry, Mrs. Sterling. For what it's worth, I think what she did was terrible. You don't need to apologize for someone else's choices, Isabella. But thank you. After I hung up, I felt a strange mix of sadness and satisfaction. Sad for the daughter I'd raised, who'd become so entitled and self-centered that she couldn't see her own cruelty. Satisfied that I'd finally drawn a line in the sand and refused to cross back over it. But the day wasn't over yet. At 4:30 p.m., just 30 minutes before the venue's final deadline, my email chimed again. This time, the subject line made me laugh out loud. I'm sorry. Please save my wedding. Mom, I'm sorry. I know I handled the invitation situation badly. I was stressed and listening to too many people instead of trusting my own judgment. But please don't punish me by ruining my wedding. Benjamin's parents are humiliated in front of their entire social circle. They're talking about calling everything off and saying it's better to discover what kind of family they're dealing with now rather than later. How interesting that her concern was still primarily about Benjamin's parents' feelings rather than mine. I realize now that the email came across as cold and dismissive. That wasn't my intention. I was trying to find a solution that would make everyone happy, but I see now that it just made everything worse. I'll make sure you're invited to the ceremony, front row, wherever you want to sit, but I need you to release the funds first so we don't lose everything we've already put into this day. There it was. The apology that wasn't really an apology. The admission that came only when the money stopped flowing. The promise to make sure I was invited to my own daughter's wedding, as if it was a privilege she could grant or revoke at will. We can talk about everything else later, after the wedding stress is over. Please don't destroy my life over this. I love you and I need you there, but right now I need you to save my wedding. I looked at my watch, 4:45 p.m. 15 minutes until the venue's deadline. 15 minutes until all their carefully laid plans crumbled into dust. I began typing my response slowly, choosing each word with deliberation. Cassandra, I appreciate your email, but I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding. I'm not punishing you, and I'm not trying to ruin your wedding. I'm simply no longer funding an event I'm not welcome at. The venue requires payment in 15 minutes, and I respect their business policies. I hope you and Benjamin figure out a solution that works for everyone. Perhaps Benjamin's family, who had such strong opinions about the guest list, would be willing to cover the costs for the wedding they helped design. Love, Mom. I hit send at 4:58 p.m. My phone immediately started ringing. I turned it off. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took myself out to dinner. Not to a chain restaurant or a casual place, but to the Whitmore, the nicest restaurant in Ashford. I made a reservation for one, dressed in my best outfit, and ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than I usually spent on groceries in a week. I sat by the window and watched the world go by, feeling more like myself than I had in decades. Other diners glanced at me occasionally. A woman eating alone at an expensive restaurant was still unusual enough to draw attention, but I didn't care. I was exactly where I wanted to be, doing exactly what I wanted to do, answerable to no one but myself. When I got home around 9 p.m., there was a car in my driveway. Not just any car, but Benjamin's Mercedes, the silver one with the custom leather interior that I'd helped him make the down payment on when he'd complained about his credit score 6 months ago. I walked up to my front door where Benjamin and Cassandra were waiting. She looked like she'd been crying for hours, her usually perfect makeup smeared and her hair disheveled. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world, checking his phone every few seconds as if expecting rescue from this uncomfortable situation. Mom, Cassandra started, but I held up my hand. It's late. I'm tired. What do you want? We want to fix this, Benjamin said, speaking for the first time. There's been a serious misunderstanding about the wedding arrangements. I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in months. At 29, Benjamin Hayes had never worked a day in his life. He'd gone straight from his parents' money to expecting mine without missing a beat. He'd proposed to my daughter with a ring I'd helped him buy, planned a wedding with money I'd provided, and somehow still felt entitled to dictate who could attend. "There's no misunderstanding," I said calmly. "Your mother wanted an intimate wedding without me. You got exactly what you wanted." "My mother can be particular about social dynamics," he admitted uncomfortably. "But she's not the one paying for the wedding. You are." "Was," I corrected. "I was paying for it." Past tense. Cassandra stepped forward, her voice desperate. "Mom, please. We lost everything. The venue, the caterer, the florist, even the band. My entire wedding is ruined." "Your wedding isn't ruined, Cassandra. It just costs more than you can afford." "We could do something smaller," Benjamin said quickly. "Maybe at my parents' house. Nothing elaborate, just family and close friends." "That sounds lovely. I'm sure your mother will be thrilled to host the intimate gathering she wanted." They looked at each other, panic setting in as they realized I wasn't going to cave. "Mom," Cassandra tried again, "I'm sorry about the email. I was stressed and not thinking clearly. But you can't just destroy my wedding because you're angry." "I'm not destroying anything. I'm simply not paying for an event I'm not wanted at." "But you are wanted," she said desperately. "I want you there." "No, you don't. You want my money there. There's a difference." I moved toward my front door. "Where are you going?" Cassandra asked, her voice rising. "Inside. This is my house. But we need to figure this out." "No, we don't. You made your decision when you sent that email. I made mine when I canceled the wire transfer." I opened my door and stepped inside. "Mom, wait." Cassandra called. "What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to get married now?" I turned back one last time. What every other adult does when they want something they can't afford. "You figure it out." I closed the door and turned off the porch light. Through the window, I watched them stand there for several minutes, probably trying to process what had just happened. Benjamin kept checking his phone, probably fielding calls from his parents about the social embarrassment this was causing their family. Cassandra stood there crying, finally realizing that her actions had consequences she couldn't charm or manipulate her way out of. Finally, they got in their car and drove away. I poured myself a glass of wine and called my sister Helen again. "Well," she said immediately. "How did the conversation go?" "They came by to ask me to fix their mistake and save their wedding." "And?" "I told them to figure it out themselves." "Good girl. How do you feel?" "Free," I said, and meant it. For the first time in years, I feel free. The next few days were a blur of ignored calls and deleted emails. Through the grapevine, mainly through Jennifer at work, whose daughter went to school with some of Benjamin's cousins, I heard that Cassandra and Benjamin had scrambled to find alternative arrangements. They'd tried to book other venues, but everything was either already booked solid or required deposits they couldn't afford. Benjamin's parents, horrified by the public embarrassment and the reflection on their family's reliability, had initially refused to help. According to the Gossip Network, Patricia Hayes had spent the better part of Wednesday on the phone with their social circle, trying to explain why the wedding had been postponed due to vendor issues. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd excluded me to please Benjamin's mother, and now Benjamin's mother was furious with them for embarrassing her in front of her friends. By Friday, I heard they'd managed to secure the community center for a small ceremony the following month, but it was nothing like the elaborate Napa Valley celebration they'd planned. No professional photographer, no elaborate flowers, no reception dinner. Just a basic ceremony followed by cake and coffee in a multipurpose room that usually hosted children's birthday parties and senior citizen bingo nights. Oliver called that weekend, ostensibly to check on me, but really to deliver another guilt trip about destroying the family. "Cassandra is devastated, Mom. She's barely eating, barely sleeping. This was supposed to be the happiest time of her life. She could have made different choices," I replied calmly. "But you're her mother. You're supposed to love her unconditionally." "I do love her unconditionally. That doesn't mean I have to fund her unconditionally or tolerate being treated poorly unconditionally. But families forgive each other. That's what families do." "You're right. Families do forgive each other." They also treat each other with respect and kindness. When Cassandra is ready to do that, we can talk. He hung up frustrated, and I didn't hear from him again for weeks. 3 weeks later, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. It was beautiful, expensive-looking stationery that probably cost more than they could afford, but the venue listed was indeed the Ashford Community Center. Cassandra Sterling and Benjamin Hayes request the pleasure of your company at their wedding ceremony on November 18th at 2 p.m. I stared at that invitation for a long time. Part of me felt sad for the wedding that could have been, the celebration I'd envisioned for my daughter since she was a little girl. But a larger part of me felt nothing but relief that I wouldn't be sitting in that community center, watching a wedding I'd been guilted into attending after being treated like dirt. I RSVP'd, regretfully unable to attend, and sent it back the same day. That afternoon, my phone rang. Cassandra. Mom, I got your RSVP. You're really not coming. That's correct. But it's my wedding. Yes, it is. I hope you have a lovely time. I don't understand. I invited you. Isn't that what you wanted? I almost laughed at the disconnect. Cassandra, you didn't invite me to your wedding. You disinvited me from your wedding, then tried to re-invite me when you needed my money. That's not the same thing. But I was stressed. I made a mistake. Yes, you did. And now you get to live with the consequences of that mistake. So you're never going to forgive me? Ever? This isn't about forgiveness, sweetheart. This is about respect. When you're ready to have a relationship based on mutual respect instead of financial convenience, call me. I hung up gently and went back to my pottery class. The wedding happened without me. According to the social media posts I saw later, it was a small affair with about 30 people. No professional photographer, so the pictures were clearly taken by guests on their phones. No elaborate flowers, just simple bouquets from the grocery store. No fancy reception, just cake and punch in the community center's multipurpose room. Benjamin looked uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo. Cassandra looked beautiful but sad, like someone trying to convince herself she was happy. Patricia Hayes looked mortified by the whole affair, standing as far from the proceedings as possible while still technically attending. I felt no satisfaction in their disappointment. But I felt no guilt either. What I felt was peace. 6 months later, I received a birth announcement in the mail. Cassandra had given birth to a daughter. The card was beautiful, professional, with a gorgeous photo of the baby and an announcement that read, Emma Rose Hayes, born March 15th, 7 pounds 3 ounces. We'd love for you to meet your granddaughter. I looked at that photo for a long time. The baby was absolutely beautiful, with Cassandra's delicate features and what looked like my nose. I felt a tug in my chest, a pull toward family and forgiveness and second chances. Then I remembered the email about the live stream. I remembered being told I wasn't the right demographic for their sophisticated celebration. I remembered years of being taken for granted, dismissed, and treated like an ATM rather than a mother. I put the announcement in a drawer and continued with my day. Because here's what I learned during those difficult months. Some relationships can't be fixed with apologies or babies or guilt trips. Some relationships are too broken, too poisoned by years of one-sided sacrifice and casual cruelty. A month later, Cassandra called. Mom, I know you got the birth announcement. Emma's beautiful and she looks just like you did as a baby. Don't you want to meet your granddaughter? I'm sure she's lovely. That's it? That's all you have to say? What would you like me to say, Cassandra? I don't know, that you want to be part of her life? That you want to be a grandmother. Being a grandmother is earned, just like being a mother. It's not an automatic right. She's your granddaughter. And you're my daughter. That didn't seem to matter when you were deciding who was worthy of attending your wedding. Silence. I've apologized for that. How many times do I have to say I'm sorry? It's not about the number of apologies, Cassandra. It's about understanding why an apology is necessary. It's about genuine regret for the hurt you caused, not just regret for the consequences you faced. I do regret it. You regret that it cost you your dream wedding. That's not the same thing as regretting that it hurt me. Another long silence. So, what do I have to do? How do I fix this? You can't fix it. That's what you don't understand. Some things can't be fixed, only learned from. So you're just going to cut me out of your life forever? Cut Emma out of your life. I'm not cutting anyone out of anything. I'm simply not going to continue relationships that are one-sided and disrespectful. When you're ready to have a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine affection rather than financial convenience, call me. But what about Emma? She needs her grandmother. Emma needs adults in her life who model healthy relationships and self-respect. Right now, that's not something we can provide together. I hung up and went for a walk around my neighborhood, thinking about cycles and patterns and the courage it takes to break them. A year passed. I threw myself into work, into friendships, into hobbies I'd neglected for decades. I started dating again, nothing serious, just coffee dates and dinner conversations with interesting men who saw me as a complete person rather than a provider. I joined a book club at the library and discovered I had opinions about literature that had nothing to do with anyone else's needs or preferences. I took that pottery class I'd been thinking about for years and found I had a talent for it. I planned a trip to Europe, something I'd dreamed about since college, but had never been able to afford because there was always someone else's emergency or opportunity that took priority. For the first time since David died, I woke up each morning wondering what I wanted to do with my day, not what someone else needed from me. I heard occasional updates through mutual acquaintances. Cassandra and Benjamin were struggling financially without my support. They'd moved into a smaller apartment, and Benjamin had actually gotten his first real job, entry-level, but it was a start. Cassandra was working part-time while caring for Emma, which she apparently found exhausting and overwhelming. Oliver had started calling more regularly, probably sensing that his own financial safety net wasn't as secure as he'd assumed. His conversations were carefully casual, asking about my health and work, but avoiding any mention of Cassandra or the wedding debacle. I was polite but distant, treating him like the adult he'd chosen to be rather than the child he wanted to remain when it was convenient. 2 years after the wedding that wasn't, I received an unexpected visitor at work. Thomas knocked on my office door frame and gestured toward reception. "Victoria, there's a young woman here asking to see you. Says she's your daughter." I looked up from my computer, surprised. Cassandra. That's the name she gave. I considered asking Thomas to tell her I was busy, but curiosity won. Send her back. Cassandra appeared in my doorway a moment later, and I was struck by how much she'd changed. She looked older, more tired, but also somehow more grounded. She was holding a baby carrier with a sleeping toddler inside, Emma, I assumed, though she was much bigger than in the photos I'd seen. "Hi, Mom." "Cassandra. This is unexpected. I was hoping we could talk. Do you have a few minutes?" I glanced at my computer, then back at her. "I have a lunch break in 20 minutes. There's a cafe downstairs if you'd like to wait." "I'd like that." 20 minutes later, we sat across from each other in the small cafe in the building's lobby. Emma was awake now, a beautiful 2-year-old with curly brown hair and enormous eyes that did indeed look remarkably like mine had at that age. "She's lovely," I said, and meant it. "She looks like you." "Everyone says so." We sat in awkward silence for a moment, neither sure how to begin. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," Cassandra finally offered. "About respect and genuine regret versus just regretting consequences." I waited. "I think I'm finally starting to understand what you meant. About the difference between being sorry something didn't work out the way I planned versus being sorry I hurt you. And I'm sorry I hurt you. Really sorry. Not because it cost me my wedding or my relationship with you or your financial support. I'm sorry because I was cruel to someone who spent my entire life putting me first, and that was wrong regardless of how it worked out." I studied her face, looking for the manipulation I'd grown accustomed to, the calculated words designed to get what she wanted. Instead, I saw something I hadn't seen in years: genuine remorse. "What changed?" I asked. "Becoming a mother myself, partly. Realizing how much you must have sacrificed for Oliver and me, how many of your own dreams you put aside to make sure we had everything we wanted. And also," she paused, looking down at Emma, "also realizing how I'd feel if Emma treated me the way I treated you." "And how would you feel?" "Heartbroken. Invisible. Like I'd failed as a mother somehow." We sat quietly for a moment, watching Emma play with a small toy. "I'm not here to ask for anything," Cassandra continued. "I'm not asking for money or help or even for you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I did, and I'm sorry. What about Benjamin? The marriage. We're figuring things out. It's been hard without the financial cushion we were used to having. Benjamin had to get a real job for the first time in his life, which was a shock to everyone, including him. We've had to learn how to budget and prioritize and actually work for things instead of just expecting them to be provided. And his parents? Cassandra's laugh was rueful. Patricia barely speaks to us. She's still embarrassed about the wedding situation, and she blames me for the social awkwardness it caused their family. She's made it clear that we're not welcome at their events until we can conduct ourselves more appropriately. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Really? I considered the question honestly. I'm sorry that you're experiencing rejection and social exclusion. I wouldn't wish that feeling on anyone. But I'm not sorry that you're learning what it feels like to be judged and found wanting by people whose approval you desperately want. Cassandra nodded slowly. That's fair. Emma had dropped her toy and was looking around the cafe with wide, curious eyes. When her gaze landed on me, she smiled, a genuine, delighted baby smile that hit me right in the chest. Hi there, beautiful girl, I said softly. Emma giggled and held out her arms toward me, the universal baby gesture for pick me up. I looked at Cassandra, who nodded. I lifted Emma out of her carrier and settled her on my lap. She immediately grabbed my necklace and began examining it with intense concentration. She's never done that with a stranger before, Cassandra said quietly. She's usually shy with new people. Maybe she's not sure I'm a stranger. We spent the next few minutes in comfortable silence, watching Emma explore my jewelry and babble to herself in the incomprehensible language of toddlers. I need to get back to work, I finally said, gently transferring Emma back to Cassandra. Of course. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I stood to leave, then paused. Cassandra. Yes. Thank you for the apology. It means more than you probably realize. Does it change anything? Between us? I considered the question carefully. It's a beginning. But trust is built slowly, and it has to be earned through actions, not just words. I understand. If you're serious about wanting a relationship, a real relationship, not one based on what I can provide for you, then that's something we can explore. Slowly. Hope flickered in her eyes. I'd like that. But it has to be different this time. It has to be mutual respect, genuine interest in each other's lives, and equal effort from both sides. I understand. And no more financial support. If we're going to rebuild a relationship, it needs to be based on affection and respect, not money. I wouldn't ask for that anyway. We're managing on our own now, and honestly, it feels better than always depending on someone else. I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd given her in years. Good. That's real growth. Over the following months, Cassandra and I began the slow, careful process of rebuilding our relationship. She called every few weeks, not to ask for anything but just to talk. She sent photos of Emma's milestones and asked about my work, my hobbies, my life beyond my role as her mother. She invited me to Emma's second birthday party, a small gathering in their modest apartment with homemade decorations and a cake she'd baked herself. It was nothing like the elaborate celebrations she used to expect me to fund, but it was warm and genuine and felt like family in a way those expensive events never had. Oliver remained more distant, still smarting from the loss of his financial safety net and not yet ready to examine his own behavior. But I was patient. Change takes time, and some people need longer than others to grow up. Benjamin, surprisingly, had matured considerably since being forced to actually work for a living. He apologized to me directly for his role in the wedding situation and seemed genuinely committed to building a marriage based on partnership rather than entitlement. The most meaningful change was in how Cassandra interacted with me. She listened when I talked about my life, remembered details about my interests, and treated me like a person whose thoughts and feelings mattered. She asked for my advice about parenting not because she expected me to solve her problems, but because she valued my experience and perspective. It wasn't the relationship we'd had before. That relationship had been fundamentally unhealthy, built on my endless giving and her endless taking. This new relationship was smaller, more cautious, but also more genuine. 3 years after the wedding debacle, Cassandra called with news. Mom, Benjamin got a promotion at work. We're finally in a position to pay you back some of the money we owe you. You don't owe me anything, Cassandra. Yes, I do. The engagement ring, the apartment deposits, all the emergencies you helped with over the years. I know you said no more financial support, but that doesn't mean I can't pay back what I already took. That money was given freely. I don't want it back, but I want to give it back. Not all at once. We can't afford that, but maybe a little each month. It would feel good to contribute to your life instead of just taking from it. I was quiet for a moment, touched by the gesture and what it represented. If it's important to you, then yes. But only what you can afford without struggling. Thank you. 6 months later, Oliver called with his own version of an apology. It was less eloquent than Cassandra's, more awkward and defensive, but it was genuine. He'd been doing his own growing up, apparently, and his girlfriend Sarah had been pushing him to examine his relationship with money and family responsibilities. I think I've been treating you like a bank instead of a mother, he admitted uncomfortably. Sarah pointed out that most people our age don't have their parents covering their emergencies, and maybe I shouldn't expect that either. I appreciate you saying that. I'd like to start over, if that's possible. Maybe have a relationship that's more, I don't know, equal. I'd like that too. It's been 5 years now since the wedding that never was. Emma is 7 years old and calls me Grandma Vic, a title I've earned through birthday parties and bedtime stories and patient answers to endless questions about why the sky is blue and where babies come from. Cassandra and I have lunch once a month, just the two of us, where we talk about books and politics and her hopes for Emma's future. She started her own small business, graphic design work she does from home, and takes obvious pride in supporting her family through her own efforts. Oliver and Sarah got married last year in a small ceremony they paid for themselves. They invited me, I attended, and it was lovely. No drama, no financial stress, no family politics. Just two people who love each other making a commitment in front of the people who matter most to them. I still work at Morrison & Associates, though I've been talking with Thomas about gradually reducing my hours as I approach retirement. I've been dating a lovely man named Robert for the past 2 years, a retired teacher who appreciates my independence and has no interest in my bank account. I travel now, taking the trips I always dreamed about but never thought I could afford. Last year I went to Tuscany and took cooking classes in a converted monastery. This year I'm planning a photography tour of New Zealand. I've learned to say no without guilt, to put my own needs first without apology, and to recognize the difference between love and obligation. But most importantly, I've learned that the strongest kind of love isn't the kind that gives everything away. It's the kind that knows when to stop giving, when to demand better, and when to walk away. The woman who received that email 5 years ago, who was told to watch her daughter's wedding through a live stream, no longer exists. She was replaced by a woman who understands her own worth and refuses to accept less than she deserves. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you're tired of being taken for granted by people who only call when they need something, if you're ready to stop setting yourself on fire to keep others warm, then you need to hear this. You deserve better. You deserve to be valued for more than what you can provide. You deserve relationships that aren't one-sided transaction. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness, especially by the people you love most. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary. Walking away from people who don't value you isn't selfish, it's survival. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling their worst behaviors by refusing to accept them. I want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to cut off someone who is taking advantage of your kindness? How did it feel to finally put yourself first? What happened when you stopped being the one who always gave in? Your stories matter, and they help other people realize they're not alone in struggling to be valued and respected by the people they love. If this resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the best thing we can do for people is show them they're not alone and that it's possible to choose yourself without being selfish. Remember, you can't pour from an empty cup. Fill yours first. The people who truly love you will understand and support your growth. The ones who don't? Well, they're telling you exactly who they are, and you should believe them. You are worth more than what you can give away. You are valuable beyond your usefulness to others. You deserve love that doesn't come with conditions or expectations or hidden price tags. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss new content, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, choose yourself. Every single time. You're worth it.